I'm on the wrong side.
You're on the wrong side. You're right. It just flipped.
There we go.
that did throw it off a little bit, right? Like
Wait,
you're
hold
used
on.
to just seeing yourself on the one side. It's so true. I didn't even notice. Like honestly, I noticed it, but then my mind didn't register until you said it. Then my mind registered it.
Yeah.
That's so funny. Okay, so our next presentation again is a great presentation. You guys are going to learn a lot about jewelry in this one. That is for sure. And we got them for an hour and a half because there's two of them, and they're going to spend, like I said, half the time in ZBrush, half the time in ZBrushCore, right? So it's a great opportunity for you guys, whatever you're using in the ZBrush world. And again, even ZBrushCore Mini can export files for 3D printing as well, right? So this is a good one for all of you that not even just jewelry. They're going to talk about general printing stuff as well. So this is really good for anybody interested in rapid prototyping and never not done it ever before. So it's going to be a fun one. So enough me talking. Let's bring them in, right? So let's bring the boys in from...
Hello.
I want to know how Eric got top billing there. Wait a minute.
It's the hat.
It's the hat. See,
alphabetical, man. It's alphabetical.
Yeah, keeping it strong. Those are a little bit older school hats right there. Yeah, I'm surprised you're not wearing the green and yellow one.
I could go and get it if you like. It's right over there. I've got like a stack. So one time I visited you guys and you're like, have some hats. And I got the swag.
Yeah, that's cool. I remember that. Well, thank you for joining us. Thomas, thank you for joining us again.
Of course.
So we are excited to have you guys here.
I didn't put my full name in that description. Look at that. Sorry.
Okay. What happened?
Oh, it just says Tomas, not my full name. I wasn't paying attention.
You want to change it?
Nah, I think, yeah.
You got to make space in case you get up to 100 million polygons. So
I'm serious.
That's why you just want to have your first name.
You need more than 100 million polygons per subtool. I'm sorry. It's a reality. It is. I'm sorry.
He's starting off well today, people. He's starting off. Okay. Let's see how it's coming. All right. So our next presenter will be. Let's skip over these. Okay. So we're excited to have you. Who's going first again? I don't remember now who's going first again. Eric, you're going first.
I would like to say something real quick though.
Yes, absolutely.
There's always like a big exodus when people see jewelry because they're like, "Oh, it's not a monster. I don't want to see it." But remember that everything we're teaching here really is about manufacturing. It's how to get your models out of ZBrush and into printing and manufacturing. So, I mean, I make furniture, we make lamps, we make set pieces, we make costume pieces. So, it's not, when we say jewelry workshop, it's really a manufacturing workshop with the focus on jewelry right now. But all of this is applicable to how to retain detail and miniatures and, everything. It really is, how do you get clean models out of ZBrush and into manufacturing? And we're focusing on
knife handles too.
Obviously.
You do knife handles as well.
Oh yeah, I do lots of knives, glasses.
Like
been doing a lot of grills. That's been interesting.
Oh yeah, teeth grills. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
You're in multiple. You guys are in multiple sectors and industries for sure.
Lots.
I'd say probably 5 or 6 deep now. Different
at
industries.
least.
Yeah,
you guys haven't noticed Eric's the comic relief of the company. Okay, there we go.
I lost track. I'm the warm-up act for Tomas. So I'm gonna talk for about 30 minutes, and then Tomas is gonna take the rest of the hour. Mainly because I want to talk about ZBrushCore, and then I guess Tomas is going to get hardcore with the real ZBrush stuff. So it should be exciting.
He wants his 400 million polygons per mesh, right? So
there you go.
Yes.
Sorry, I know I got the dual monitor thing, so keep looking over here, but I'll try and look at the camera. So.
Yeah. That's we're all used to it. We're all used to it, I think, by now, right? We're all used to sometimes side face, sometimes profile front.
Yeah.
I'll do this every now and then. Where am I?
I don't have any dogs in the studio today, so
you
don't see any tails wagging around in the background. Yeah, so I'm going to talk. Okay, so as Paul just mentioned, I've done a lot of sectors. In fact, this is my second ZBrush Summit presentation, but the last time I was talking about doing ZBrush in a planetarium show for the Griffith Observatory, which has yet to open, by the way, thanks to COVID-19 or whatever. But in any case, so it's I've been doing ZBrush since about 2004. It's amazing how many things that I've used it for. Just this year alone, I did a animation detailing the molecular workings of HIV. I did a job for Destiny for promo for latest Destiny installment for the mill. I've done prints for museums of various arthropods and so on. So ZBrush is amazing because there's no end to the number of different industries where ZBrush is incredibly useful. And I just saw on CNET, holograms are real now. Like they have this whole video. Freaking holograms are real. That's another place where our skills could be put to the test. So how did I end up getting into jewelry is actually because of Tomas. I actually met him at a Z Summit a couple years ago, and we connected. And then I think when the pandemic started, I was starting to freak out, as we all were, being trapped in a little room. And I decided to take his jewelry class because I thought I might want to make something in ZBrush that my wife would actually care about finally. And it was a great class. I really enjoyed it. And then he asked me if I had any experience making tutorial videos, which is a very silly thing to ask me because, as you guys know, I'm not at Michael Pavlovich level yet. But
well, you have
I made a few.
You got the real deal books.
Yeah, but back when there were books.
Yeah. I wrote for back in the days of literacy.
These things, people had paper and you opened it and there was a bind.
I'm kind of glad those days are over because writing those books is like the worst homework assignment you can possibly imagine. So anyways, we teamed up and we're working with, along with Tony Rodriguez and Henry Williams, we started ZBrush Jewelry Workshops, which is an online place where we're trying to basically bring together several sectors into the glory of ZBrush. And this is why I'm talking about ZBrushCore today, because we're talking to, imagine there's a whole group of artists out there who've been bench jewelers for decades, and they're starting to get into working with computers to create their jewelry. Then you also have another set of jewelers who have been using CAD programs such as Matrix and Rhino and that kind of stuff. So sort of these very sterile, I know I'm being a bit of a snob here, but I'm preaching to the choir, very sterile kind of design programs where you have this, and Tomas is one of the first to like say, hey, you can sculpt it just like regular sculpture on the computer. That's ZBrush. So we want to get those people in. And then there's also people like me who are visual effects artists who've done all other kinds of things. And now we're getting into the 3D printing thing as well. And so we've been putting together this organization online, ZBrush Jewelry Workshops. And one of the reasons I wanted to get into ZBrushCore is because I've heard a lot of people talk about ZBrushCore. They're like, oh, it's not as fully functional as ZBrush. It doesn't have all these fancy features. I can't really make anything with it. It's not true. You can absolutely make great stuff with ZBrushCore. And it's really great for getting people into ZBrush who are intimidated by the interface or feel like they're not sure they want to commit financially to buying full featured of ZBrush just yet. So ZBrushCore addresses these two issues wonderfully. For one thing, it's a very stripped down version of ZBrush. And number two, it's also, you can rent it for like what, like $10 a month, something like that?
Yeah, the monthly subscription is $9.95 a month for ZBrushCore.
Yeah. And you can cancel it and reinvigorate it, you know what I mean. Reinstate it anytime you want, as much as you want. And I find that to be incredibly useful. So for people, and this is also really for those of you who teach, who want to get more people into ZBrush, ZBrushCore is a great gateway drug for getting into ZBrush. And just to prove that you can actually make something with it, guys can see on my screen, I have my Octopus ring. Well, here's the actual ring. Of course, it's not going to focus very well, but it is an actual ring, and it came out beautifully.
We'll go full webcam.
So there's the thing. It actually exists, and my wife loves it. She thinks it's fantastic. It's a Dumbo octopus ring. Let's look at some pictures of it so you don't have to see that blurry image.
She's wearing it?
Well, I stole it from her, but it's my ring. But she does wear it at a regular basis.
Wait, you started off doing something your wife wouldn't like, but then you're like, nope, my ring.
My ring. It's going to sit on my desk. You're not allowed to wear it.
You know, the best part is that I spent the entire last presentation setting up everything and making sure this would go smoothly. And then like 30 seconds before we started, I realized that this was still in the house. So I had to go run and get it, come back anyways. But as you can see, here's some wonderful pictures of the ring in question. And so you can see it there. It actually exists. So this was done entirely in ZBrushCore. And that's the second ring that I'm going to show, which is, this is my praying mantis ring, which I just finished. Now, these are renders done in Redshift, right? And the actual ring you're going to see later on when we show the video, we're going to show the actual casting. So here's the actual ring itself cast in sterling silver. So this is really cool. I haven't seen it in person yet because it's hot off the presses, but here are some Redshift renders. And I actually like the photographs of the real thing. The renders are a bit too clean. I like the fact that this looks.
Where's someone gonna be able to buy one of these if they want to purchase one of these?
Well, I'm glad you asked. We are going to be, as part of ZBrush Jewelry Workshop, we are working on building a store where we will be selling our own jewelry creations as well as the creations of some of our students. So Tomas can talk a little bit more about that, but we're in the process of putting that together. So it's really exciting. And eventually we're going to branch out into, as Tomas said, things other than just jewelry.
Henry's in there. Don't worry. Henry's got you guys. He's in there.
As he says, it's launching. I don't want to put words in his mouth because Henry is doing a lot of the work on that. And it was like, I don't want to say anything.
All of the work on that.
We're just critiquing, so you can see. So with this mantis ring that I just did, and this one is definitely going to be mine. I know it's like the dual monitor thing is driving me nuts. So here's a couple prints of it. Now, what I did with this one, just to be fun, because I like to give myself challenges, is I actually sculpted this ring twice, once in ZBrush and once in ZBrushCore. And I have a video about this. Let me turn off the video and sound here, where I actually go through the process and I'm going back and forth between ZBrushCore and ZBrush, showing you how I did it and comparing both of these processes. So you can see this on our YouTube channel, ZBrush Jewelry Workshop YouTube channel.
Yeah, we shared it at one point too. When you had launched it, we shared it too.
Yeah, and he also has a video on the Dumbo ring. He's been making quite a few videos on the core stuff, just so people know that you can actually make stuff in core and monetize.
You wanted to know if I could make videos? Well, I make videos, man.
Yes,
I'm a video. I think I know Camtasia better than ZBrush, actually. Let's see if I can get this over here. Yeah, so if you go to our website, ZBrush Jewelry Workshop, I actually have the entire Dumbo Octopus ring tutorial for free, so you can check it out. It's in 6 parts. And it goes all the way from initial design to finished product. So let's talk about ZBrushCore a little bit, and I'll talk about the process I made using this ring. Because the cool thing about, I've been using ZBrush since 2004, so I've happily been able to see all the transitions of ZBrush over the ages. And for me, going into ZBrushCore, it just feels like going back in time a little bit with some extra cool features as well. So I started this model actually with Z-spheres. So we can use Z-spheres in ZBrushCore. And then, of course, you can go down to adaptive skin. And hopefully you guys are familiar with Z-spheres. In the video tutorial, I go very slowly. It's written, or I mean, it's created for absolute beginners. But if you notice, you go down here to adaptive skin, we do have a lot of the options. Not all the options we have regular ZBrush, but enough that you can definitely make some cool meshes. You can choose classic skinning or the new version of skinning, or even Dynamesh. So if I want to go to a Dynamesh version, I can use this slider. So that's all there. I mean, the most important things for creating jewelry are all part of ZBrushCore. And those would be things like Dynamesh and ZRemesher, so that we can take our geometry and actually make it watertight, so that we can export it. We also have in the Z plugins in ZBrushCore, we do have 3D Print Hub. So you can check your scale, update your size ratios, and you can import and export STLs. So for this particular project, I started with Z-spheres, and I wanted to do a Dumbo Octopus because they're adorable. So yeah, I'm going to show you. Actually, last year I was commissioned by a museum in a group that makes things for museums to do some Dumbo octopus sculpts. So this is sort of a realistic Dumbo octopus. They're called that way because they have these big flappy fins. There's a number of species of them, so these fins change from one to the other. But I'm sure if you guys have ever seen videos online, they're just like the cutest octopus ever. And they're deep sea. Some of them look like cartoon characters. It's hard to believe that they're real. So I had some experience actually sculpting a real one. And one of the things that Tomas and I both philosophically agree on is if you're going to do an animal for a piece of jewelry or another type of sculpt, it's always good to go in and actually do the original thing as realistically as possible, so you can wrap your head around the anatomy. And then when you go to incorporate it into a piece of jewelry or another type of sculpt, you have that knowledge in your head that you can then transfer to your model. So these are done in ZBrush, full version of ZBrush, but I've imported them into ZBrushCore. So let's go back into, take a look at the Dumbo octopus ring. So I have the various stages here saved out. So I actually, converted this into a skin. And actually, what I should say is one of the things I love about Z-spheres is that, of course, you can pose them, right? So let's see if I can find the posed version. There we go. We can see I started to pose this one right here. I was demonstrating in the videos converting this into a mesh. So we'll go into a later version right here. So you can see I took the Z-sphere version and I posed it as Z-spheres. And then I created a skin from it. And then I spent some time making some polygroups of it. So here is a version with polygroups. And I did a little bit of smoothing on it. And then, of course, we turn off the solo button. Here we go. That's what I was looking for. So here's the posed Z-sphere version. And then I used the ring band. This is found in the in Lightbox. If you go into Lightbox and look under jewelry, we have a bunch of projects, starter projects, or I should say, the good folks at Pixologic have created some starter project that you can use. So I just used a plain band. And then you can, of course, if you are concerned about the scale, you can always use the gizmo. No.
You're still in Z-sphere mode. You're not looking at a skin.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry. There's the Guillermo. Sorry, the gizmo.
The Guillermo.
Darby Huge, what did we do in the Shadows fan? And they started calling the character Guillermo Gizmo. And ever since they've done that, now when I'm in ZBrush, I keep thinking of Guillermo instead of Gizmo. So little inside joke there.
I can't let go of Gremlins. What can we let go? I actually made a gizmo that was the Gremlins.
Oh yeah, I saw that, man. That's an awesome sculpt. But yeah, you can use the you can switch over to good old transpose and use this as these are millimeters here to measure your scale. So there's always a concern about scale in ZBrush, but you have a number of tools in ZBrush and ZBrushCore that allow you to ensure that you have the proper scale. So let's go to a later version here. So once I had my Z-sphere version converted to a skin, then of course it's time to actually do some sculpting. And so you can see I have a couple versions here where I was adjusting the head. Like this one was okay, but the head was looking a little grisly. But you can see by creating polygroups for each of my tentacles, I can then mask and pose them individually. And the other important aspect that we have here in ZBrush Core, back to this version, that I use for creating the wing flaps is we have Sculptress mode. So if you have Sculptress mode, of course, that allows you to easily pull things out. So for example, if I could take this guy and I'm going to go delete higher levels of resolution here, and we can use something like, well, snake hook brush always works. Snake hook for everything is awesome. And I don't need symmetry, but I'm going to turn on hold the control key and move this over, turn on sculptors mode, and turn on wireframe, and you can see I can start to pull this out, right? So just like in ZBrush proper, you can pull these out. Now I could have done the tentacles also in sculptors mode. It's just a style of working in whichever way you prefer. Go ahead.
You just like really brushed over something that probably people don't know about the UI, what you just did.
All right, go ahead. Give it to me.
Control and be able to move your menu along the top and both sides of the document and the bottom.
Yes. Okay. Thanks for pointing that out. Yes. Yeah. Believe it or not, you can have, there's so many wonderful buttons in ZBrush. You really want to get to them all, but they can't always fit on the screen. So there's a trick, especially if you're making a custom UI, where if I need to get to these buttons, I can hold the control key, find a blank spot, and then move back and forth.
It'll work on the left and right side too.
Yeah.
Left and right side too.
And this is important because as you see, when Tomas does his presentation, he is going to be using his own custom UI, which he's created specifically for kind of a jewelry sculpting approach.
And I make everyone else use it.
Well, I've actually learned how to use it. So, and I think it's a really great interface, but there's so many freaking buttons in there because you can also bring in buttons from various plugins and that kind of stuff that you kind of have to get used to being able to move around and find these other buttons. So, and you can also, maybe you can do it on the bottom here too.
You can do it on the sides too. Yeah, right next to the document.
Yep. There you go.
And the other one too. Yep. No. Yeah. There you go.
There you go.
Yep.
There you go. Cool. So with the ability to use sculptors mode, of course, that adds a lot of flexibility. So what I did for the ears here is I actually pulled them out using sculptors mode. Zoink. This guy's going to be a mutant. Sorry, Mr. Octopus.
Double wing.
Yeah, he's a biplane octopus.
Double Dumbo.
So of course, once you do that, you have you've destroyed your topology, but have no fear, for we do have a ZRemesher. So there's a version of ZRemesher that is part of ZBrushCore. It's not as fully featured as the one in the main ZBrush, but it's still, to be honest, my favorite mode for ZRemesher is just to turn on half. So especially if I'm using something like Dynamesh. So just to briefly review, what Dynamesh does is Dynamesh allows you to create a single mesh where the topology, all the points are evenly spread out. It's also great for fusing things together because eventually I'm going to want to fuse all these parts into one thing so that I can make it a single mesh that could be then printable. So Dynamesh is really useful for that. You can use Dynamesh here in the main menu right here. You can set the resolution. So if this is too low, I can undo that and increase the resolution until I get something that I want. Or you can use Gizmo. All right, I'll stop doing that. Has a remesh by Dynamesh mode. So you have a bunch of different options. This one's nice because the Dynamesh that we find here, this resolution is kind of based on the overall scale of the object. So sometimes it takes a few tries to get the kind of Dynamesh that you want. Whereas if you're thinking, I want to create something that is just, 1 million points or 500,000 points, I want to set the point limit manually, you can then go into Gizmo, choose Remesh by Dynamesh, and then I zoom out. You have this little cone here, and I can pull this out. You can see that point down, or that number down there is in thousands. So if I pull this all the way up, actually, no, there we go. It's an absolute. It's not in thousands. Sorry about that. So 5,000 points all the way up to 1 million. And when I let go,
can we get that number to be 10 million?
Yeah.
Actually, I'm going to give you a little nugget. I'm going to show something special about this workflow also maybe that could help in our presentation today.
All right. Stay tuned for that, man. There's always more stuff to learn. But, once you have your Dynamesh version, of course, you can see the faceting here. This is just because I Dynameshed a low poly res, but you can see I could go over here with the smooth brush and start to turn off sculptors mode and start to smooth this out. But once I have things Dynameshed, of course, then I can go in and use my ZRemesher right here. And actually, I tend to use the half mode a lot. What this does is it basically ZRemeshes down to half of this point count. So I just do that over and over again until I get a nice low poly count. And the reason I like that is because I find, in my experience, that using the half mode tends to give you a really nice topology. Of the various modes of ZRemesher, it's my favorite one to use. I just keep doing it until I get it down to the point count that I want.
Yeah, just on that point, I used to just go from, let's say I try to get my base models in that 700 poly range for my first base model so I can get 8 to 9 subdivision levels. And I used to just go down to the base number, and it has to calculate, like, especially on a model like this where you have all the little holes, it has to calculate the size of the holes all the way down from this point to this point. Where if you do it by half, if you have holes or punch throughs, it's much easier to retain a ZRemesh. If you half it down to the number you want, you get a more reasoned ZRemesh.
Yep, exactly.
It keeps it cleaner.
Yeah, it keeps it cleaner. I just think it's awesome, man. I'm going to go to a later version.
It's ruined a whole chapter in a book.
It's awesome.
Pressing one button. Remesh. Done.
There you go, man. So we can see here, this is a later version. Obviously, I turn off the solo button. What I did is, you can see after I kind of got the octopus looking the way that I wanted it to, and I did want to talk a little bit about suction cups because they're my favorite feature of an octopus. They're like an extra way to hug you. The way that I did it, there's so many different ways to do suction cup type deals in ZBrush and ZBrushCore. ZBrushCore, another thing that it has, which is awesome, is it does have multi-alpha or VDM brushes. So these are kind of pre-made, but just as you saw in the last presentation, these are great for pulling out little creature details. So what you could do is you could like use one of these and then kind of scale it down and adapt it. Now, from what I understand, I could be wrong, correct me if I am, Paul, but you can't actually make custom multi-alpha brushes in ZBrushCore. You have to do that in ZBrush, right?
You got to do it in the full version. We don't allow you to make VDMs in Core.
Okay, so that is one limitation, but still, you got a lot of great VDM brushes available to you. I think there's like 3 or 4 of them in here. Do we have the regular chisel shapes? Yeah. Chisel shapes. This is a great one. So this is probably good for doing suction cups. You could go in there and do a suction cup like that, and actually do one and then invert, the brush in there. That's one way to do it. The way I did these is I used actually the clay buildup brush, and I changed the alpha to this dude right here, and I changed the mode to drag rect and up to my Z intensity. So you can do this, and you can also do that trick where you press the 1 button and it repeats the last stroke.
You can see 1 on the bottom.
Yeah. Is that? I'm hoping that's helpful, not too much of a distraction.
Somebody was asking what you're using to show that.
It's called Sword Soft, which I think is a terrible name for
Sword Soft.
Sword.
Wow, I use
soft sword.
Soft sword.
Or no, I think you're right. Hold on. I don't know.
I'm working hard at not making any terrible jokes. I'll let you guys come up with your own. But this is a family program, so you could set this to like drag rect. So if I wanted the suction cups to all be the same size, but I think what I did for this one, because I like the kind of organic look to it, is I literally went back to freehand and kind of did this and just pulled them out like that, maybe with a little bit lower Z intensity. Yeah, there we go. Because I kind of like that organic look, and that's how I made them. Now, of course, I come from a visual effects background, and I'm a detail junkie like a lot of ZBrush artists are. So I really worked hard at making details that no one will ever see in the final ring because, the suction cups, I don't know if you're going to see it on there. But you can see some of them. Say that again?
They're important.
They're important. I know that they're there. Okay, that's the
Right.
most important thing. And then I actually, let's see, let's go back here. Poor mutant, pour guy. Ignore his additional eyes. This guy was hanging out near some nuclear waste, I guess. I created the sort of the webbing, because these guys do have webbing between the tentacles, by using an insert mesh brush. So that's another feature that we do have on ZBrushCore. So what I did is I just went in with kind of like a regular primitive. It's like an insert sphere, and just pulled these out. And let me see, I have multiple subdivision levels. Let's go to a lower subdivision level, and I'm going to delete lower and higher. Pull out a sphere, just one of these primitives using the insert mesh brush, and it masks the rest of the surface. I'm going to hide this. Actually, I'm going to hide this. And then I switched over to Move Brush and just started pulling this out to make these little pieces of webbing that you see. All right. And eventually, once I had that, I basically hid the rest of the geometry and broke this out into another subtool. So I ended up with a subtool that just has the webs and one that has the mesh. And then I fused it together with Dynamesh. It's just one approach. I could have kept them all as one subtool. It's just kind of like, I think at a certain point, it's a little bit easier to work with these as a separate subtool. And I was just kind of finessing how they fit in here. I'll do that real quick. All right, so I have my octopus here. And then I worked on the ring. And for the ring, I sculpted these little corals. Now, marine biologists out there are probably going to comment that Dumbo octopus is a deep sea octopus and corals tend to grow in shallow waters. But let's just say that this one took a vacation and is hanging out in a coral reef, okay?
And don't think they won't say something. I guarantee you there are emails now.
No, that's the kind of stuff that keeps me up at night. But anyway, so once I had this ring all together, let's open up the final version. It was simply a matter of merging all the subtools, doing Dynamesh to fuse it into one surface, and then using ZRemesher to get it down to, whoops.
I got it.
No. That's my timer saying that I've talked too long and Tomas needs to go. But I got it down to about 250,000. Went over to 3D Print Hub, checked my size ratios, made sure that there was the size that I want. This is probably a little bit bigger than I wanted. And then exported as an STL file, which is a nice print format. The other thing that is very important is this button right here, check mesh volume. So you want to click on that and make sure that if you get this message just telling you it's a volume, you know that this is a closed volume. There's no holes that it cause problems in printing. So that's a very important step. So you want to check your scale. You want to make sure it's a closed mesh. You want to decimate it, get it down below 1,000,000 points.
But hold on, real quick.
Sure. Go ahead.
You guys are using that so everyone understands. You're using that to find the material costs, what you're going to use material-wise?
That's a Kitco plugin, which is, I don't think
I'll show you.
Yeah, Tomas is going to show you. The
it's not
metal
Core.
plugin is for ZBrush. I don't think there's a version for ZBrushCore, is there?
No.
So
Okay.
yes, you would take that and do it with your metal multipliers, and you can get your estimate of what your metal cost will be.
Right.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
So, and so basically I exported this and I sent it off to Tony. You'll see a little bit later on when he takes the rings, how he goes along about actually casting them. I think that's what I wanted to cover in ZBrushCore, but I really wanted to make sure that everybody understands, especially teachers out there that engage people who want to get into ZBrush. ZBrushCore is an excellent way to get into ZBrush. It gets you used to the interface. You can make something, you can bring it all the way to print, and then from there, if you decide you want to move on to the full ZBrush, then you can get even the fancier tools, which I'm going to pass this over to Tomas, and he's going to show you all about that process. So thanks very much, guys. I hope this was educational.
Education.
Education.
Very nice. Very nice. And then you hand everything off to Henry, and then he takes over.
Actually, Tony in this case.
Oh,
Yeah.
Tony.
But also Henry helps out. Henry's also a printing expert too, so he helps out a lot of that stuff too.
All right, so we'll throw Thomas up on the screen. Beautiful.
Look at that star.
I love that star. I'm sure I recognize it from somewhere.
I'm pretty sure. So I always start with a star because this way I know that it's good geometry, because some of the other primitives are older geometry primitives and you have to do conversions and stuff like that. So I know that this is good geometry. And I almost, if there are things that have lots of bridges and stuff, I'll start with a low Dynamesh, and then, because you can join those things really quickly. But I'll always ZRemesh. I start with as low a quad model as I possibly can. If you go to 700 or below, you can get a model that's 8 to 9 subdivision levels in the 8 to 9 million range. So that way you can have a lot of subdivision levels and a fairly low poly model, like 8 million. And so I always start here. And that way, when I'm looking at my subtools, if it's a star, I know that it's a model that I'm about to import, or it's a model I'm about to work on, or it's a piece of geometry I'm about to add. I know that this is my base format. So I was doing a project in LA, and we needed to make a custom earpiece, and it had to fit on the person's ear. And normally you take castings and stuff like that. And so there's a beautiful program called Scandy. And the only reason, there are a lot of these scanning programs, they have this little mirror thing that we just saw that you can now actually look behind and look at the thing you're scanning instead of trying to, because it's scanning out of the front camera. But Scandy is an awesome program. And the cool thing about Scandy is you buy it, and then you don't have to pay for the downloads. A lot of the other ones are free, but you have to pay to download the model. So I found Scandy to be really useful. And so we scanned the side of his head, and it's millimeter accurate. And, we did it. And we were thinking about what to do for the presentation. I was like, well, no one talks about this, as far as like good scanning for home use. And so I had made this ring for a line of jewelry that I was doing. And since it's sort of Halloween, I figured that I would show you a scan of myself, and we'll make me into a devil ring. And the reason I'm doing that is because this already has the back sculpted. So I'm going to show you a couple techniques that are useful for incorporating things, and some of my love for the history states and history brushes. So I took this, skinned the head, and now we have the base for the head. Now you'll notice I kept the ears because I don't know where my ears are actually going to wind up. And I know that these ears are pointy. So I'm going to use the ears as the anchor point for the piece. So I'm leaving the ears on the piece because I know that it fits into the band. So we have a cell phone and a lovely thing called Scandy. And basically you just move it around and it scans. And so you push the button, it says create a scan. And so we hit the button.
Keep it together.
I know it starts to
no talking. Keep it together.
I cheated.
No breathing. No, you can't even breathe.
All right, so I'm going to discard that scan, and I am going to show you a scan that we've already done and sent to myself.
Didn't work? That one didn't work out?
Well, it did, but I'm not going to show it to you. It's horrible. And so you do have to keep I have a tripod for my phone, and I find that it's easier to...
Very portable, Thomas. I see. Very portable.
Right? I got my little scanning studio set up. And so here is the scan.
Yep. We can see it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
And so then you have the option of... you have the option of sending it out as a bunch of different types, STLs, what size, millimeter scale, what do you want? Boom, sent it out, and magically, it did not just magically appear in ZBrush.
Look at that.
I just downloaded and imported it because this is a ZTL. And so this is the scan. And you can see it's not a great scan, but like they were discussing yesterday, what it does is it puts all of the places, all of your bone, all of your muscle, your, you know, expression, you don't have to worry about that. Now all we're doing is tuning a blockout sculpt. I lost my stylus. And so to clean up scan data, it's really easy. I just take a lasso and oops, take the lasso, just mask it out. And I'm obviously not being too careful because guess what? I already have one of these done at a different stage. And mask it out. We need that. And then we're going to go, flip, hide part, delete hidden. Okay, so this is very important. I'm going to pull this out of that folder and I'm going to put it in a new folder. Always create new folders when you do this. Otherwise, you're sorting through a world of, I know we've all done it, split the parts and you have 900 parts and you got to find the 3 parts that are good. Do it inside of a folder, split the parts. And that's 457 meshes that were just loose floating garbage in there. You need to get rid of that. So now we just take this, drag it outside the folder, take this, delete all, and look at that. It's gone. We never have to look at those again. So organization when you're splitting things up is really important. And you really don't want those artifacts because if there's one of those artifacts inside the final shell you have, it will not read solid. It will not read watertight. And you can sit there and try to remesh. And if it doesn't work, split the parts because often you have like weird little artifacts from the Boolean or the Dynamesh. So we now obviously need a solid object. I just Dynameshed it. And we got this. And I cleaned this up a little. And I know I don't use Dynamesh a lot, but here's a perfect place to use Dynamesh. I know I'm going to remesh this tool. So I'm just going to divide it up. I divided it up to 9 million. And I put eyeballs in it and I started sculpting on it. And just trying to roughly get the likeness. You know, I'm not out here to get photorealism. We're dealing with a tiny little thing. So you're going to have to blow out your details a little anyway. And so this is Dynameshed and started to sculpt on. Now, what he was saying yesterday with the micro wrinkles and the directionality, this is something that this is one of the reasons I actually sculpt in high resolution. We're going to skip to the one that actually has high resolution here. So you can see I'm at about 9 million. It's just whatever my Dynamesh divided up to, because this is still a Dynamesh. And you'll notice I use my stroking pattern. I use clay tubes so I get no buildup. I control the layers with clay tubes. And then I sculpt at like 5 to 3 million or 5 to 3% or Z intensity of 5 to 3. The higher the subdivisions you have, the lower the Z intensity you can use. And so you can see here that I start to lay in. I'm always clay tubes. I'm like, I don't even know what that was. So this way I can start laying in sort of the directionality of my surfaces. And I'm creating the surface rhythms as I go. So when I start to come in and do like other, let's say, details, I know what my rhythms of the part are. And so I can come in and stick with that. And I just keep slowly stroking up and stroking up. The thing about this is that when you print, prints work in layers. So if you think about sculpting in layers, I know I've said this for 16 years. If you continue to sculpt in layers, they show up in prints better. A small layer with a little lip that's definable shows up a lot better than just a big cut. Because if you just cutting your lines in, you lose surface continuity. So there's no relative geometry to judge where those planes are sitting. And that's why, like, if you're doing weaving and you just go through and draw the lines in, it looks incredibly flat because there's no continuity in your surface layering. So that's real important. And so you can see that we got here, And I'm going to kind of blow through some of this, and then we can kind of come in and do some of the stuff in detail, or if there are any questions. Now, I'm always asked, when do I know it's time to remesh? And it's like when you can't sculpt on the model anymore. Or you have something, geometry that's weird, you can't use it, remesh. So I got my rough features in that I wanted, and then I pulled some horns out. Okay, so I have these horns. We're all happy with the horns. And I'm sculpting along, and now we're going to jump to the next little feature here. Similar to what he was doing earlier today, I make textures because I can really quickly whip through and just come over to a flat plane and just whip out a fast texture that I need. And then I use Extractor. I'm a huge Extractor fan because it scales with brush pressure. And that's something a lot of the other curved brushes and all the other things don't do. And it's really cool because if there's something I like that I've already sculpted, I can just go by and record it and use it later. Normally I'll bring it to a straight plane like this. And then what I do is I actually save, let's go to Extractor. I actually save my alphas. And this way I can just bring them in. If there's some that work really well, I can just bring them in. And I always have successful or things that have been successful for me in the past. And this is just a really fast way. I mean, you can, in jewelry, it's tricky because you have very small detail and you have to blow everything up a little and you have to blow it out a little. So some of these really fast textures work very, very well with sulfuring. It depends on how you're finishing it. But, you know, I'm horribly anal about jamming lines on top of lines on lines that you'll never see because one day they will have a 2-micron printer and I won't have to resculpt my pieces. So that's my theory.
Do you want to, you're probably going to show, someone was asking about your glove. You're wearing the glove. So you guys
I wear Doki wear.
Yeah.
I like them because they have the terry cloth on them. So they hold up. Hold on.
You just let your hand move across the screen easily on a Cintiq or a tablet.
And I've had
that's what he's wearing.
This one for about 8 years. So they hold up. Hold on. When I turned, there we go.
You lost it.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of his gloves. They're not that expensive and they hold up really, really well. And with the terry cloth here, it allows you to clean your screen while you're working, or not terry, microfiber. It lets you clean the smudge off. It's really helpful. And they have the ones with wrist supports. So when I'm working a lot, it has the Velcro wrist, and I use those as well. It just so happens this is the one I grabbed. I have like 18 of them because I keep buying them every year. Like, got to replace them. So, and if you don't know what an extractor is, it's awesome. And like no one uses it. I don't hear people.
Do you want to show it?
Yeah, that's what I'm about to show.
Oh, okay.
So what you have, let's just take a simple texture here. And so I'm going to use these ribs on that horn, right? And so I came over, I was like, I need a bunch of lines. You just come in, sculpt it quick. And then you turn on your extractor brush. You want your brush to be a little bigger than your model. There we go. And then you just hit G. And this is your recording mode if it's in the blue. And as soon as you touch the screen, you're going to see a little line. And that is where the recording stops and finishes. So we're going to pick this crease right here, and I'm going to start recording. You can see that little line. And then I'm going to try to find a crease. There we go. And so now, if you pay attention here, see how it converted that into the lines. You can see the alpha there. And I'm going to come up here to the base plate. And I always have a base plate in. So if I need to do a different texture, I just duplicate it and then just sculpt on that. And I always have one. But also so I can come in, and you can see that we now have our extractor brush on. It's red again. And I'm going to do this very soft to very hard to very soft, soft, hard, soft, soft, hard, soft. So you have a lot of control over how you're laying these textures out. It works for scales and things like that as well. Like often I'll do a scale pattern and then I'll just record the outside edge, and then I'll throw them in on the side, and that way the scales are getting smaller around, and you don't have any of that weird have to fit it in. You just stroke it in, and it's small and it works. And I just find Extractor to be incredibly useful, especially because I save the textures from a project in the same place. So it allows me to organize my textures and use them very quickly and easily. But that whole pressure sensitivity is just such a thing that, and the other cool thing is they're not just straight. How they interpolate movement is really nice. So you can, it's pinching weird, but you come back in and you can use these textures in all kinds of shapes and corners and curves. And, you just sculpt something on a flat and record it. It doesn't have to be flat. You can sculpt it like, we can come here and say, man, I really love my eye. So I need my eye. So you just come in here and you hit G. And either there's the circle, which is the drag, where if I just want the eye, I can just drag it out. Or if I want it to be more like a texture and have it weird, I can just come in here and go, record my eye. And now let's go back to this base plate. What is going on? Oh, I forgot. Like, where are all those patterns? I just saw the one line. I'm like, let's go. And so now you can come in and it's going to repeat that eye. So you can see how that is just really super useful just to create some really fast, weird, kind of interesting stuff. And so if you do something you really, really like, bam, record it, throw it on a flat plane and save it for later. And then you can come in and tune it into a texture that you want to keep around. And, sometimes when you're twisting, it's not twisting right. So you go in and play with a little, and it allows you to fine tune the textures just super fast. And I find it invaluable. I use it all the time. I'm a big Extractor fan. So we came back over here. Hold on, let's go to Extractor and pick a good. And so I picked this. I was like, okay, I'm going to put some texture on my horns. Oh, look, I have no geometry. So this is as far as I can go with this geometry, ZRemesh. And I'm just going to jump to the ZRemesh so we're not wasting time on processing time. One guy in our neighborhood has a car that makes so much noise. It's ridiculous. Did you all hear that? It's like, come on, man. So this is something to look out for when you're ZRemeshing. So this is my first ZRemesh, and I just put on adaptive, because adaptive means it's going to bring as much detail as it needs to hold the rough shape of the form. So it's a good starting place. And you'll notice that on this pinch, see here how the geometry is trying to keep that detail. So ZRemesh is smart. If there's detail there, it's going to try to think about keeping that geometry. Well, now I know I'm going to project. So I am going to come in here and I'm going to smooth that out. I'm going to smooth this out. I'm going to smooth that lump out. I'm going to smooth my eyes out a little. I'm going to smooth the hair texture out of that, because when it's ZRemeshing, I don't want it to think about this. I want it to think about the big shapes. I don't want to think about the top lip. Really don't want to think about pupils. All right, there we go. And so this is where halving down is really helpful. On this, it's just one lump. We probably could do it straight down because it's not complicated. But if you have anything that has arms, holes, thin parts, you really want to do it half, because as you go down and you start to lose certain details, you can bring them back in at that low poly and then remesh again. So it allows you to control where you're remeshing. And so we're going to just come here. We're going to turn adaptive off. We're going to turn half on and ZRemesh. Yeah, that's my ZRemesh stance.
Perfect.
Right.
Everyone's got one. Everyone's got one.
And so you can sort of see where we're going. ZRemesh by half. The other cool thing about this is you can use poly paint to control Z-remeshing. So if I know that I'm going to do real high detail on the face, at this point I could poly paint it blue and poly paint the back red. And the next time I Z-remesh it, it's going to put less geometry on the back and more geometry on the front. So within Z-remeshing, you can really control how it's remeshing. So it's just such a powerful tool. I can't believe people complain about remeshing in ZBrush, but I don't know. I don't do it for games and stuff. Maybe that's the crabbiness. I don't know.
But topology snobs.
Yeah, it's silliness. The other thing is when you're manufacturing, what you want is to be able to control your mesh. And that's why I go through all this, because you want the geometry to be where you need it, because we can't make a bump map and now we just apply it to a picture. We need the geometry to be there or it won't be there in the print. We can't use pictures. So this is how we do it. And so now half again, ZRemesh, and we're going to keep going. There's 737, and that's when I'm going to just start dividing it up again. And so now, let's just divide this all the way up to see where we're at. So I have 8 subdivisions with 12 million poly model. That's great. So I'm just going to lower this back down into maybe the 100,000 range. There we go. And here's our next most wonderful feature in the world. And that is history states. So I know that this is the model. I want this detail in the model that I've just remeshed. So we have our base model. You hold down Control, you tap on your orange block, it turns white or gray or whatever that color is. And then you just come down here and you hit Project History. And you can see that, boom, there it is. And then what I normally do is I will go higher res. I do it at a lower res first so it gets my geometry in the right place. And then I'll come up. 3 million is a good place to do your reproject so you don't choke out your machine. I tend to go to my 12 million and reproject there, but I have a lot of RAM and stuff, so it doesn't take 6 days to do. But we're going to go project history. Boop. And here it goes. What time do we end?
You still got like a half an hour.
Okay, well, I have a 5-minute video I need to deal with, so I just needed to.
You got a half an hour yet.
Okay, cool. Just
1:15.
Okay, awesome. So now you can see that we've reprojected all of our detail, and I have my subdivision levels. So this is super useful, very important for mesh control. So now we're just going to hop to this guy. Boop. A little bit different. You can see I've started to apply some textures to it, and it's real close to sculpted. So now I need to get my ears on because I want my ears to be the reference point or the place that it's connecting to the ring. So the ears are in the right place, but I need to get my ears onto this model. So when I merge them later, everything's in the right place. So I come in and we have our ears here. And basically what I'll do is I'll take this model, we'll turn transparency on. I'm just going to drag this stuff out. I'll use Move Elastic because it's, oh, I lost my subdivisions on this. Okay, hold on. We'll jump here and I'll lower my subdivisions. Sorry about that, guys. So I'll come down to this level and I will bring my ears out here. We'll smooth these so we can go through it. I guess we don't have to do both sides. So we were here, right? Now I'm going to move these here. When you're this low, you don't want to use Move Elastic. It'll grab everything in its brother. So we get our ear roughly in the right place. Get my head sort of in the right place. Make sure I have enough meat for my ear. And higher res. I'm going to have
meathead.
to. What's that?
Said meathead.
Yes, right. Higher res. Higher res. Now we're back in that couple 100,000 range. And I am going to mask the. I'm going to mask this off. And we're going to take this, hold down Control, tap this. You can now see we're gray. This is our history state. I'm going to come back to here. Nope, sorry. Come up to here. I'm going to make sure. I tend to do a little pre-work and try to get it fairly close. Otherwise, you can get these very odd stretching artifacts, which you can get rid of. You just have to know they're there. That's how a lot of people fail with their projections, is they don't know that those artifacts are in there, and it is a disaster. And so now project history. So you can see that when we're projecting, we get a lot of stuff, right? All this stuff, because projection distance is how far from the surface it's looking for a negative normal to project to. And they now have the little buttons. I have them in my interface here somewhere. Inside and outside. Yeah, outer and inner. You can change what face it's looking for the projection. But you can see when you're projecting, you get all this weird stuff, right? You get these weird artifacts. You get this weird artifact. You're like, okay, so how do we do it? Well, let me come back over here. And I'm actually going to go to a higher res for this. And now we have the history brush. So we've assigned a place that it's going to look for. And then we just come in. I'll do a first quick pass. The thing to remember about your history brush is you need to be 90 degrees to camera for where you're projecting, because it is a projection tool. It's not a morph tool. So if it's going to, well, here, you can see these straight edges right here. If I do this and I'm like, oh yeah, this is great. I got this super projected. It's super nice. Well, no, you've just made a mangling of your mesh here. So you need to be careful and remember that you're dealing with 90 degrees. So move the camera a lot when you're doing this. Come in, make your brush smaller. And you just, and the other nice thing about this, here it's okay because we're trying to locate where the ear is at first. And so I'm just going to come in and do this quick, just so I have my locationing done. Get it around. And now I can turn this off. Unlike projection, you don't have to see the model. So it allows me to see where I'm messing up or where my mesh is ugly without having to look through the other model. And so I can come in here and, right, I'm rotating, I'm smoothing, projecting, rotating, smoothing, projecting, rotating, smoothing, projecting, until everybody is roughly in the right place. And you just keep going about it until it's there. Higher res. You can see the artifacts from our last ear. And you keep going until you get a guy with ears. Now, I've already sculpted on these ears. Somehow I lost my subdivision, so not quite the plan. But these were projected, and then I stretched them to match my earrings. And here, I got most of my detail. I started to punch this stuff. And here is a really good, kind of cool tool now. There is the adjust, but this has been done for a while, right? And so I just went in, and on my other one, I got my flow of the eyebrows going. And I'm like, oh, they're so subtle. Well, all I have to do, come in, let's change our focal. Oop, I do not want that. I want that. And of course, I'm not going to be super exacting here. If you're not going to be super exacting, you can go away from it because it's easier to fix an edge out here than it is right against your hair. And now that this is masked, they're in your deformation palette. There's a thing called contrast. And if you haven't stroked on these recently where you can use adjust, contrast works pretty close. And that is where you just drag it and you can see that it's starting to make these stand out more. So that's a really good way of taking the subtle brush strokes. Here, you can see it here. See how these are more bold than these because this, it increases the contrasts. So that's a really easy way to bring detail out and ready for printing. And this is super nice because you can sculpt your model and then look at it and go, okay, that's not going to show up. And then you can just mask it off, contrast, mask it off, contrast, and you can get, areas that are more detailed. And like, okay, well, this goatee isn't enough. I'm going to, let's say you print it out once and you're like, I don't really want to resculpt all that, but I need to punch that detail a little. Boom. Contrast. And you can start to really punch this stuff. And often that's all you need to do to get it to read better. And so we've come here, we've got all this lovely sculpting done. Ooh, look at that. And then I know that I wanted it to be my earrings. So the cool thing about this is, these are the production models. These are literally the pieces that these rings were made off of. And so I just drag the production models in and slap them in my ears. And we wind up with this model. All I did is come in, union meshed it. And now everything's at its high resolution. It's got everything. Everything's where it is. It's where we want it. And I decimated it to 1 million polys. And you can see we're a little higher than 1 million polys, and I'll show you why. So during decimation, we often lose geometry, right? Things soften out. And you're like, oh, I lost all that. It's okay. Honestly, this is where I do all of my high detail work for print is after decimation. Because yet again, we have that beautiful, beautiful thing called what? What is it, Paul?
History brush.
History brush?
Yeah.
And then also, because you were bringing up contrast, someone was talking about with the mat, there's actually contrast brushes that you can locally do what he did too.
Have they always been there?
I don't, have you used them?
No, I don't use them.
Oh, well, hit that old B key, Thomas. Hit that old B key.
Y'all keep sneaking stuff into the software. I mean,
I know. I'm like, I don't know.
C for contrast. And there'll be 2 brushes called Contrast Delta
and Contrast Target.
And Contrast Target. So Target is doing exactly what that slider's doing, but now you locally. You don't have to mask anything out. You just sculpt across what you want. And Delta is going to keep applying it and keep applying it and keep applying it and keep applying it and keep applying it. So you don't actually have to do the masking because someone brought up about cleaning up the edging. Mm-hmm. So technically you could just also use the brushes themselves as well.
There's probably like a hidden treasure map in ZBrush, just like in on the back of the Constitution. You just gotta find the right brush. And
yeah.
Look at that.
Go to Philadelphia.
He's using it now. Yeah. Well, that's what what Michael also, he's good at showing those little Easter eggs, those hidden things too on his
That's
video.
so funny. I just masked and went. Never even thought about it. I'm sure
that's why we're doing these though. This is why we're doing the summit, right?
Yeah. So yeah, you can come in and
I was just answering the question.
That's awesome. There you go.
People want your ring now. They want this one of you.
And so we have this high 16 million poly sculpt. How do we bring this overblown hair that I just did into a print? We make this our history state, control tap, it's gray, come back here. And the beauty of this history brush is you can use it with Sculptris Pro. So now I'm going to come in here. I am going to make this small because the scale of my mesh is based on the scale of my brush size. And I can come in and just in those places that we need that detail to punch, I'll do it slightly bigger first so we know kind of where we're at. And then I'm going to zoom in, make my brush smaller. And I'm just going to come in and tune this up for print. I can make it smaller. And get this really, really tight. And I know this was one of my tips and tricks last year, but I use this every time I prep a model for print because there are just some places you need geometry, you know? And you can come in and clean up all this stuff that's messy. And you don't need to do everything. You really just need the edges that are touching your planes, you know, because, right, the whole thing doesn't have to be amazing. That's why I do it sort of with a big, let's turn that down. No. Dynamic.
Is this model already decimated? Is this the decimated version you're playing with?
This is
right now?
decimated down to 1 million.
Yeah.
And then I come in and then just slowly size my brush down. And, you know, a lot of this middle stuff.
Why we made the decision with the history brush to do what it's doing. And you're not restricted to topology.
No, it's absolutely awesome. And I'm bringing 14 million poly details into a 1 million poly model. And you can see we've jumped 200,000 points. And I say 1 million. There's not a printer on the planet that can't deal with a 1 million poly model. So it's just a safe target to hit. But, I mean, we have printers that will take 5 million poly models or, you know, 30 million polys worth of models on a plate. But it's just easier to keep targeting at 1 million is just a good place to target your models.
Yeah, Alex asked what printers you guys are actually using.
Well, we have Formlabs. We have a Form 2, a Form 3. We use SolidScape. We're getting some of the cheap Chinese, or cheap in the sense of cost, Chinese printers to us so we can. I want to find something that's affordable that I can get to my members because, you know, some people think $3,000 is expensive for a printer, and Formlabs is probably the best, most affordable prosumer printer you can get right now. But I haven't tried the new, you know, there are these new Chinese printers that have like 8K and 6K and stuff. But I'm not just looking for printers that do a good print. They need to be able to be usable by people who aren't makers. You know, a lot of people don't mind sitting and fuddling around every print for 10 to 30 minutes. Well, that's days of labor lost if you're trying to make money. So when I talk about printers, I am talking about monetizable printing, you know, not just, oh, I got one of these and it took me 3 days to print that. That's a loser in my book. You know, I don't care how good you can get a print if you can't do it every time you hit it. So those are the printers we use for the most part. SolidScape, and the Form printers. Henry has a few printers that he likes. The B9's a great printer. It's just, you know, it's $10,000. It's not $3,000. So, you know, and that's really the next level printer.
Well, that's targeting jewelers. That's targeting you. That printer's targeting jewelers, really.
Yeah.
Miniatures, and jewelers.
Yeah, people who want, I mean, because those are true 25 micron printers. You know, it's 25 micron XY, and then you can do 9 micron Z steps.
Yep, that's an important thing you just said is the microns on the X and Y. It's not just about the Z.
Yeah, because the Z is the easy one to get because you just need a good stepping motor. You know, you can get a 25 micron Z. I would argue anyone using modern stepping motors can get a 25 micron Z, because that's just how far how accurately you can turn a screw. Where XY is really your print resolution, is how focused the light is, right? So to get something laser wise, you need expensive lasers, and that's why the SLAs jump. With the LEDs and the LCDs, LEDs, and the mirrors, what's that one? DLP. That little girl, that commercial. It's the mirrors. Sorry. She just said mirrors so oddly. It's the mirrors. But that technology is really bringing resolution to affordable printers. I mean, some of these are $400, $600 printers. And if they do 80% of what a Formlabs does, of course you're going to buy that. Now, if you have to sit there and futz with it for 6 hours to get a print to work, that's not very helpful, really. At least as a manufacturer. If you're a hobbyist or a maker, that whole maker world, people love to fiddle futz around with equipment and screw a light onto it. And I don't have time for that. I need to push print, and it needs to print, and I don't need to think about it. That's not making money. That's being a hobbyist, which is great. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not making money. So you can see, you can come back in, tune this up. We're at 1.295 million. That's easy. But let's say it had to be a million. Just decimate it, custom, boom. And now it's basing its decimation algorithms on the geometry that we have right now. So it, at this level, is going to try to keep this stuff. And you can see losing 200,000 polys in a redecimation like this, it's just going to take them off the back, and it'll really try to keep the stuff in the front. And so as you're going along, if you are adding new detail in and your model's getting bigger again, redecimate it, and you'll see we'll lose very little of that detail going down to 1 million polys. Ooh. See, that's that. And then this is it. That's the 1.2. That's the 1 million. So I doubt any of you could even notice the difference in those. So, that the strategy of how you're decimating is really important for manufacturing. And then, of course, get metal price. It says this is not a watertight model. And so I use the Kitco. So check mesh integrity. The problem with Sculptris Pro is it leaves a lot of weird triangles where you can have really tiny, bizarro coplanar surfaces. It happens. Just fix your mesh. Now watch this never close. I love that. Close your holes. And then get metal prices. Oh, you are killing me. Oh, you're going to do it to me. Okay.
Old trusty. Go the old trust.
Right? You just know it's going to happen. Okay. Close holes. So sometimes it's nigh impossible to get these to close. You're at 1 million polys. You can dynamesh it, reproject it, and you can touch up those once it's at a closed mesh again. I did this stuff. It just never fails. Dynamesh. Project history. I didn't check if my
so the nice thing about this ring is that if you're wearing it and you punch someone, they'll remember who punched them because they can see an imprint of your face on it.
Right. It's very, very easy.
It's just a perk.
You never
should make
that could go viral on TikTok. The Thomases of the ring punch of the world.
You should make a baseball bat with your head on it.
Oh, there you go.
No, I have a baseball bat I've started that is just all different words, and then it's milled out to say so it's sticks and stones may break your bones, but my words are going to hurt you.
Anytime I make a goofy, sarcastic statement about something to sculpt to Tomas, he's like, I already did that.
It could be also a stick shift for a car.
There
Right?
you go.
Top of a stick shift. That's the beauty of this. You can go anywhere now with this stuff.
Oh my
It's
God.
perfect.
I love it. Okay. I'm not even going to sit here and try with this one. So normally,
Grab a different model.
yeah. Or here, we'll just take this back to the beginning because this was set up where it was a closed model.
And there are people are asking about printing. There are companies out there you can just send your models to print. Shapeways, iMaterialize, Sculpt-off.
And we've been
FNL.
working on a
Creative.
relationship or two that's going to try to have a more professional, affordable place to do that. So that's one of the things. As our community gets bigger, it allows me to use the soft power of the community's numbers to leverage companies into giving us breaks. And so I'm always like out there just pushing people. I'm like, come on, you can do it.
So yeah, don't forget we have a video to show that actually goes through that process. There you go.
Oh yeah, no, we have the cast. There we go. So the beautiful thing about Kitco is it actually checks the spot market pricing on your metals. And you can see that this is $100 worth of silver at the market weight. But if you want to do it in 22 karat gold, it's $12,000 worth of gold. So yeah, gold jumps dramatically. And but if it gives you this, you also know you have a closed model. And then cancel. And so now we have our model. It's ready. You go to your 3D print hub. And this is the step that everyone I've ever run into goes, Tomas, how do you do scale in ZBrush? And then you send things out to printers and they're like, dude, this model's like 4 feet tall, or dude, this model's like 1.5 millimeters tall. You know, and this is a common problem with people exporting models from ZBrush to an STL for other people to use. It's this amazing button that everyone forgets. And that is update size ratio. Boop. So you are now telling the print exporter what your scale is. Now here's a very, very important lesson to learn. Let's say you have 3 or 4 models here. And you've done this and you're like, okay, look, I've got my scale right. I'm great. I'm ready to go. And then you're like, oh, wait, I want to look at those ears again. And now you're like, wonderful. Now I'm ready to go. And you export your STL file. Problem is that you are on not the file you measured. So you're going to come out with something that is the wrong scale. So just make sure and it doesn't, you can do it on this model. It doesn't matter. It just has to be the model that is selected is what you have to update your size ratios on. And I hit this button like 10 times before I send it out because we all do it. We do it all the time because let's say you're exporting 10 pieces and, you know, you're like, okay, and you shuffle it around and you just sent the wrong piece we all do it. But this is the reason people think ZBrush does not have accurate scale. I'm just going to send everyone to this number right here. Let's go update size ratios. See this number, how it has 5 decimal points? That's 5 decimal points of a millimeter. ZBrush is as accurate as anything on the planet, if not more so, because very few things will go to, what is that, 1/1,000th of a millimeter?
1,000, like 10,000.
10,000? Okay.
No.
Whatever.
100,000.
No, it's
100,000.
100,000? So
No,
it's
10,000. 10,000. It'd be 5. 5. 10,000.
no, it's 7's a 10th, 100, 1,000. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Needless to say, that's not a real number in the physical world unless you're using electron microscopes and we're polishing things. So guess what? Not a real number. Other thing is, don't get into CAD mind where these numbers mean something. If you are ever going to actually go into manufacturing, these numbers don't matter, because what you're going to do, because you have shrinkage in printing, you have shrinkage in casting, you have shrinkage when you polish, right? So you can have a 3 to, depending on what metal you're using, 3 to 8% shrinkage in your model. So you're going to take this, like if you're going, one-offs are fine. You can stretch the ring, you grind it. What's 2%? Well, but if you're going into manufacturing, you're taking this piece, you're running it through your process, and you're setting a caliper on it. And you calculate your percentage change. And there is a lovely plug-in. Isn't it just...
Do you want to make sure that you show the video? I think we're getting close.
Are we still have time, don't we? Or are we running out of time?
We got about 5 minutes left. 4 minutes left.
Oh. All right. Well, let me walk you through the video. So basically, you're going to go through the process I'm about to show you. And so you put a caliper on that. There's a plug-in where you can do your, I think it's quick scaler, isn't it? Increase scale, decrease it. Oh, yeah, here, percentage. And so you can type that percentage into here, and you now have this as your scaling option as you export your other models. But you need to do it on each model, because a bridle, a really thin, wiry ring, it shrinks differently than something like this, which is a huge mass of metal. So casting's voodoo. It's not science. And when people are like, oh, but it's a 1/10 of a millimeter off, man, 1/10 of a millimeter is gone. If you're not casting, measuring, and recalibrating at this export point. And that's why you get all these, I call it the CAD mind, because people who come from the CAD world think that, a 1/10 of a millimeter is real. It's not real until you do your second round of measurements, because, you don't know what your shrinkages are, and not until you print it, until you've cast it. And so, like I said, one-offs 3%. If it's small, you can grind it off. But, you can't do that. It's just, you never know that until it's actually gone through production. So don't let people give you grief out of your model. Say, well, would you measure it after casting? And that'll shut them up, because they're being silly.
Show a video on casting.
I don't push go.
All right. Are you ready to show the video then?
Yep, let's do it.
All right. Let's show the video.
Okay, now I have to watch it, don't I? Because I don't know it by heart. So these are the two models that we are producing. So we just went from the 3D Print Hub it goes straight into Formlabs. We printed in the purple and the blue. This is obviously the purple, being purple. You scrape it off the plate, and you put it in the alcohol wash. Their wash units are actually very nice. Getting a wash unit helps, because in jewelry, if you don't get it all off, all your sharp corners will have a little liquid down in the bottom of the sharp corner, and it softens the prints if you don't clean them really well. And their cleaning units are very nice.
What's your wash time for those? Are you doing?
Usually 15, 20 minutes.
All right.
You don't want them too long, because it'll saturate the part.
And you're doing
So now
wash
he's
in air.
doing a isopropyl wash again, and then just blowing it off. You don't want to brush it off, because that'll put really minute scratches on the surfaces. This is their new CW40, which works really well for things like the bigger ring. The purple still works better for the bridal stuff. The purple's a very robust material. It's tough. You can actually have people, you can send it to someone as a sample, and it'll hold up, and they can try it on without blowing the print to pieces. You can see it's a slightly crisper print. But the colors are a lot of that. Here you go, putting it on the sprue tree. So you have a flask, you mount this at the bottom. There's like that little nipple shape. That actually becomes the pouring apparatus. We're going to burn this out, and that becomes the negative that you put the metal in, that you pour the metal in. So you can see he's making it tight to the tree so it flows well. This is your flask. You tape around the flask, or I guess they have tubes now. And they're heat shrinking it down. This is William Henry's shop. Why this isn't being done live is because William Henry actually has a production shop, and people are working today. So if it had been on Sunday, we might have done this live, but nope. This is a really nice machine. It actually mixes the investment under vacuum. So you have very, very clean. There are no air bubbles in it. And that, if an air bubble sticks to the ring or whatever you're doing, that'll show up in the cast. So put the base metal into the casting and it's melting. These are called burnout ovens. That's the flask. You put the flasks in the burnout oven and it burns the wax out. Now, this is where we'll talk about that at the end so I can keep up with this, but this is the area that most problems with resins are caused. We'll talk about that in a second. So it takes the BBs, melts them into a molten flask. This also has a induction, so it rotates it, so it keeps it very evenly melted. When it's even in that temperature, under vacuum, it drops the metal down, and then it has overpressure. So that's scorching hot. And what you do is you toss it in water, and the investment literally just kind of explodes. And then you get your tree. You can see those little ridges. That's called flashing. And you notice it didn't do it on the other one. We can kind of talk about that too with the resin stuff. And so you can see the rings in the cast. Magnetic tumblers are little pins, and they rotate, and it knocks the casting skin off. That's what that white is. And now you have your base metal part. And I don't think he actually put it in the tumbler. We also have a tumbler that has very fine grain, and you set it in there for like 20 hours, and it just takes off the surface. It doesn't aggress it very hard, but this is called liver of sulfur. It oxidizes the surface is black. And then you either throw that into the long tumble, or they're doing it by hand because of our time constraints. Because Rio was sending us stuff, but they messed it up, and I guess it's showing up today. Not helpful. So Tony popped these out.
I think they just messed up the shipping though, right?
Yeah, it was just a shipping thing. And so that is the mantis butt and mantis face. And that is the back of Tomas's ring.
The Tomal ring.
And Tomas's butt face. And those pieces are here.
You got them up close?
Yeah.
There you go.
Wow.
Come on, autofocus. My camera weirded out this morning. For some reason, it's not.
Focus.
Is it there?
There, it's starting to get it.
I had to turn the autofocus off because my lens was going. Eh! And when your $1,200 lens goes, you're like, eh.
Yeah, it's focusing in.
But
There you go.
There you go. Very cool.
And
then you can adjust. What's the range of sizing you guys are going to be doing?
Oh, anything, any size.
You guys going to do all the sizes?
Sure.
Yeah, when we set up the store, you'll be able to actually specify the size.
Because we're not going to hold inventory. We'll produce them when they're ordered.
Sure.
So just real quick on the flashing and the different resins.
Mm-hmm.
So the problem with casting, and where a lot of people run into problems with casting, is when you're 3D printing, you're not using wax. You're using a resin. And so traditional waxes just burn out. They just go away. There's no issues. Now, there are no issues. But the resins have issues. So there's something called a ramp up schedule of how you burn these things out. And you really have to tune the ramp up to the resin. So like the purple is very tough. So it actually has more resin in it than wax. And so the ramp up is really fast. So it burns that out, and then it slowly burns the rest out. But what that is thermal expansion. And then where you get like orange peel, that is uncured resin coming to the surface of the part, like gassing off, and then it aggresses the plaster, and that's why you get the gnarly texture on it. So often when you're dealing with casting places, don't let them blame you. Make sure that they know what the thing is, and then you're like, and especially if you're sending them the form and they're using their printer and they come up with a weird surface, that's on them, because that's them not understanding the thermal expansion or the gassing off of uncured resins. So, don't allow casting places to cast it once and then send you a garbage piece. That's on their back. It has nothing to do with you. That's a big one, because a lot of times they'll screw the casting up. They're just like, oh, we don't want to print it again. They'll send it. And you're just like, you are crazy, man.
Nice.
Cool.
Well, thanks, guys. This was fun and educational and a good time. I know the chat was going off the whole time, flying. Enjoying the tips that you guys were sharing and the process that you guys are sharing for the jewelry world. And like you said, it's not just the jewelry world, really.
It's everything. I mean, everything that we teach and everything that we talk about here, if you want to do miniatures, everything we talk about is applicable, because it's really all we're teaching is how to retain high detail and how to manage your meshes for manufacturing. And so
it's a revolution, man.
It really is. It's exciting. And you now that you can get high resolution prints out of a $500 printer, are you kidding me? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and you guys are doing a special summit offer right now, right?
Yeah. Do you know what it is?
Through,
I think is it 20% off? Henry, what is it?
$100 off.
$100 off. Yep.
Put it in the chat. And I believe Henry said it goes through to Henry wanted to go through, just so people are aware. I know some people had asked previously in chat.
We usually let it go for like a month or a couple weeks. It's not like it has to be done at the end of chat. I know all right.
He's saying
there he goes again. See, what do I know?
Okay, so guys, pay no attention to what Thomas is saying. Okay? I don't work for the company, and I'll give you the correct information. Okay, here we go. It's $100 off, and it ends Wednesday.
Oh man.
Oh,
that is right there.
Yes, that's not my department. I don't know.
Henry's
I like bugs.
Right.
Okay. So if you guys love what Eric and Thomas have been showing you, this is a great location to go to the ZBrush Jewelry Workshops, right? These are your two instructors that are going to be with you along the journey of helping you discover miniatures, jewelry, production for highly detailed small items, I would say, is how I probably would put it, right?
And we go from you think a CD thing's a cup holder. I mean, we go from the basic. We show you how to do it from, how to load plugins in at the very beginning and how to load ZBrush to, more advanced stuff.
Somebody wants your hat, Eric. They want to put an offer on your hat.
This hat right here? You got to talk to the folks at Pixologic. Although, do you guys still make this
anymore?
One?
They're gone.
Oh, yeah. It's old
Those
school.
are not available anymore.
I got a bunch of them, so I guess I'll put them on eBay. I got my blue one has gotten holes are being worn in it, and my wife wants to throw it out. I'm like, no, that's when it's perfect.
Yeah, I still have that weird green and yellow one.
Yeah. It's
oh god, that's pleasant. They want to see the other one. There was a whole range of colors.
Yes.
The Brazil is my favorite. Actually, there's a picture on Google Maps of me walking my dogs wearing the Brazilian one.
Really?
I don't know if it still exists anymore. It was a few years ago.
Oh yeah, because they keep reshooting, right? That's hysterical. That's
I think funny. I wore that one on the Great Wall. I think there are pictures of me with the green and yellow on the Great Wall.
Yeah, there's hats still, people, but they're black now. They're just all black with just the white logo. And there's two different ones. There's one called a dad hat, where it kind of fits your head, and there's one more like the baseball cap. So those are the only two. But we don't make the ones that we just don't make them anymore. That Eric's wearing anymore. They're gone. So, and then this is a one-off. This one doesn't exist. I'm the only one.
Paul Gabriel special.
Yeah, it was a test hat to see how it would look, and then.
So we're going to start making knockoff ZBrush hats in odd colors. Just go to the black market button on.
Oh Lord! All right, well, guys, it's been an awesome. We're going to do some giveaways, and then the rest of the summit is myself and Michael. We're going to do tips and tricks next, and then we're ending the day with more behind the curtain of Pixologic, what we have been up to in ZBrush since the last version, which was so long ago, 3 months ago. So
I can't wait for day 2 juice.
Woo! Yeah, as Ashley called it, juice. Give them the juice, right?
Day 2 juice.
Well, this for Ashley. All right, so guys, thank you so much. We're going to do some giveaways. Thanks for being a part of the summit.
Always a joy. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Have a great one.